Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and dear colleagues. Welcome to the STARS EU Annual Conference 2026. It is my real pleasure to welcome you here in Opava, and especially in this beautiful Silesian Theatre. And because today we're not just sitting in the theatre, we're stepping onto a stage where ideas about the future of education in Europe will be shared, challenged, and hopefully transformed. This year's theme, Transformative Education for Europe's Future, is hopefully not just a title. It is a question and perhaps even a responsibility. What kind of education do we need for a changing Europe? And how can we shape it together across countries, institutions, and communities? Over the next few days, we will hear perspectives from European leaders, regional representatives, universities, and innovators. But most importantly, we will build connections between them, because transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in collaboration. So looking around this room, I see many people from different countries, many institutions, but for the next few days, we're on a mission to transform how we think about education and how we work together to make it real. My name is Adam Parma, and it is my pleasure to guide you through today's program. And now, let us begin. To open our conference, it is only fitting to begin with voices that connect Europe, the region, and the academic world. So it is my pleasure to welcome first speaker on the stage, Mr. Roman Klepetko. Please join us on the stage, Mr. Klepetko. Deputy Director of the Czech National Agency for International Education and Research and head of its Higher Education and Lifelong Learning Division with long-standing experience in Erasmus Plus and the internalization of higher education. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, or I can maybe have it in my hand. So thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to be here. Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you also on behalf of the Czech National Agency for International Education and Research. We are the Erasmus Plus National Agency, but also I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Sports, Youth and Sports. I'm very glad to be here. Especially, I would like to say that I'm glad to be here in the region because it was said that the European University Alliances and such group of people that are here, you are the influencers and innovators of the system. And I would like to highlight that in the region, we are having 3 alliances of the European universities, which is very good, I would like to say, because it's actually the complete participation in the region. Of course, we are having other regions which are complete, but only with 1 university maybe. And in total, we are having in Czechia 13 European University Alliances, and here we are having 3 of them. So that's important to say. And maybe just for you to know, if we compare it with Prague, there are only 2 alliances, so it's really something that I would like to highlight. I would like to highlight also that we are a very important part of the system of the higher education, European higher education area, because there are now 65 European University Alliances, which are together with 650 universities from Europe. So it's already some group of universities, and that's something that you are the influencers and innovators of the cooperation in Europe. What's also important to say that in these events, it's the spirit that you should bring the ideas, you should bring your practices, you should discuss it, because the European Commission and the European Union sees this initiative as a key pillar of the cooperation in the education. So that's also something I would like to highlight, that your ideas that will be here, that you will share here, that's something that is shaping the future of the cooperation in Europe. What I would like to also highlight is that you are also the advocates for the European higher education, because maybe as you know that now we are in the discussion of the multi-annual financial framework, so which is the budget for the Erasmus for the next periods. And it's important also to see the value of your work, of your cooperation, and that you show what you share together and what you develop together. And it will be part of the next, I'm pretty sure it will be part of the next generation of the Erasmus program. And also it may support the higher budget of the program. So don't forget that you are part of the advocacy work for the next generations, not only in Erasmus, but also of all Europeans. I would like to say that for the Czech National Agency, and also for the Ministry of Education, these events are important because we are glad to see what you share here, what the ideas here for the future, and also to be connected with you. So I don't want to tell you about the benefits of the alliances, because I think that all of you know it pretty much well. So I'm just saying what you can do maybe for the future and what is the main purpose of the alliances. So thank you very much for having me. I wish you good days here in Czech Republic, in Opava, and I hope you will enjoy the days here and to have a good cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klepetko, for your welcoming words. And now it's my pleasure to invite our next speaker on the stage, Mr. Jan Veřmiřovský. Please join us on the floor. Deputy Governor of the Moravian-Silesian region, responsible for education, youth and sports, focused on modern, accessible education and stronger links between schools and regional needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to greet on behalf of the Moravian-Silesian region here at Silesian University in Opava on the occasion of the significant international event. The STARS EU project and alliance represent exactly the type of cooperation that Europe, and especially regions like ours, need today. It's not merely about a formal network of universities. It's about building a true European economic community that shares knowledge, innovation, and above all, responsibility for the future. The Moravian-Silesian region has long been undergoing a process of transformation. We are transitioning from a traditional industrial region to a modern economic based on education, innovation, and human capital. And this is precisely where I see the fundamental importance of the STARS EU Alliance. This initiative strengthens the international of higher education, open doors to Europe for our students and academics, and at the same time brings European know-how directly to our region. For the Moravian-Silesian region, it's crucial that young people have a reason to stay, and at the same time they return to us. Projects like STARS EU create an environment where they can obtain a top-notch education without having to live permanently. From a regional policy perspective, this is absolutely essential. I also greatly appreciate the practical dimension of this cooperation is not just about academic exchange, but about joint student program, research project, and connections to professional practice and the labor market. It's precisely the direction we have long supported in the region, linking education to the real needs of society and the economy. The Silesian University in Opava plays a very important role in this regard. It demonstrates that even a university located outside major metropolitan centers can be a full-fledged respected partner in the European arena. And for us as a region, this is a strong signal that investing in education makes sense. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that today's gathering is not just a conference, but another step towards deeper cooperation, new projects, and concentrates results that will benefit not only the academic community, but also our citizens. The Moravian-Silesian region will continue to support initiatives that develop talent, stringent international cooperation, and contribute to making our region a place of opportunity. Thank you for your work and your dedication, and I wish the entire conference every success. Thank you for your attention.
Continuing this perspective, let me now invite our next speaker, Mr. Michal Kokošek, the Deputy Mayor of the city of Opava, responsible for property management, social affairs, crime prevention, and municipal police, combining public administration experience with an engineering background.
Thank you. Vážené dámy, vážení pánové, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure on behalf of the Opava city and Moravian-Silesian region to welcome you here today to the STARS EU annual conference. Your presence here sends a strong message. Opava is not just a dot on the map, but a place where ideas grow, where international connections are built, and where we think about the future. This year, Silesian University celebrates its 35th anniversary, and what a journey it has been. From a modest regional institution, it has grown into a respected university with a strong international profile. You can see this in the growing number of international students and academics who come here from around the world and became part of everyday life in our city. The fact that this conference brings together more than 160 participants from 9 institutions worldwide is a clear testament to that success. As a representative of local and regional government, I truly value the university's role beyond education. It plays an important role and part in the development of the region, supporting the economy, strengthening social stability, and helping to address employment challenges. At the same time, it prepares students in fields that are essential for our future, from healthcare and social services to languages and public administration. In doing so, Silesian University is helping to shape the future of our society and improve the quality of our life in our region and beyond. I wish you an inspiring and productive conference with interesting discussion and new ideas. And I hope that when you leave Opava, you will take with you not only new insights, but also the feeling that your time here was truly well spent. Wish you a nice conference. Thank you.
We welcome also many international guests and speakers. So let me welcome on the stage Dick Powels, President of Hans University of Applied Sciences and Chair of the STARS EU President's Commission, helping steer the Alliance's strategic development and international cooperation. Please, the floor is yours.
Try. Yes, well, it's hard to see you because it's dark if I look into the room. Esteemed Rector, Tomáš Gongol, thank you very much of having us here, organizing our annual conference here in Opava and gathering us all together for 3 days to just reflect and think about the future of our alliance. Esteemed colleagues of the STARS EU Commission, also a very warm welcome to all of you. Today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow we will also discuss about the future of the STARS EU Alliance, where Brussels says, well, for us also in the multi-annual framework, the further development of the alliances is very, very important. We are facing the next step also of the development of our alliance. I think important discussions, and I hope we will be very fruitful on that. Dear colleagues and students from all STARS EU partners and dear partners also from STARS EU, thank you all for being here in Opava, celebrating our collaboration and working on a joint, prosperous future. Transformative education for Europe's future. That's our theme for this conference. A challenging theme in a world where economic vitality next to defense and military seems to dominate the political scene. And within that, 2 words seems to dominate today's debate about the development of human capital. One of the goals of universities, to develop human capital. And those 2 words are major shortages, labor shortages. Across Europe, the labor market argument increasingly dominates the discussion. About a year and a half ago, Mario Draghi urged the European Union to strengthen its future by investing in innovation, in skills, and in solutions to labor market shortages. One of the solutions he mentioned was attracting workers from outside Europe. Of course, this usually comes with the qualification, only for so-called shortage sectors like engineering, like healthcare, and like education. And that term, labor market shortages, in itself is interesting, considering that, for instance, in the Netherlands, around 1.5 million people out of the 10 million people in our labor market currently are working in the Netherlands were not born in the Netherlands. So 15% of the labor market is already coming from outside the Netherlands. And you see that across Europe in different ways. So yes, Europe wants international talent. But there is another perspective also worth to considering if you look to labor market shortages. One of my esteemed mentors, Professor Klaas van Egmond, a Dutch professor of course, argues that we should organize our economies and society so that they can function within the boundaries of the labor force that is already available in your country. Partly by increasing productivity, and that's not by working harder, but by working smarter, but also by aligning the level of prosperity with the labor potential that actually exists in a country in Europe. And in practice that may mean consuming less. And according to him, this would create more balance. It could reduce tensions about labor migration, and it would be better for our environment. After all, we have only one planet. And a shortage of workers is one thing, but a shortage of Earth is something entirely different. But today, I want not to focus on that part of the debate on labor market shortages. Instead, I want to step back and ask a more fundamental question. Why do we pursue internationalization in the first place? Why do we value international students in our universities? And why do we collaborate so closely as 9 European partners in our STARS-EU alliance? For me, the answer goes far beyond labor market statistics. Of course, those numbers matter. We are universities and our graduates do enter the labor market. But education is about more than preparing people for jobs. It's about personal development, about citizenship, about understanding how you as a person can contribute to society. In other words, education has societal value, not only economical value. And the same to research. Research at universities is of course aiming for societal impact, helping companies and organizations moving forward, and that is indeed important. But if we only answer existing questions from companies and organizations, we risk overlooking something else. Our role as universities in addressing broader societal challenges. As knowledge institutions, we should not only respond to questions, we should also help to identify new ones, to address uncertainties in development in our society. And international collaboration exactly helps us to do that. At Hanze, one of our core values is reciprocity. For us, collaboration begins with curiosity, a genuine desire to understand what drives the other person. An open and inquisitive attitude, asking questions, listening, exploring perspectives. Reciprocity is central to the way we think about internationalization. Our students learn from students from other countries, with different backgrounds and values, and vice versa. Our work is rooted in our region, but it is connected to our country, to Europe, and the wider world. And that's why we collaborate within STARS-EU, to learn from one another and apply that learning into our own regions. And that learning is not only about how we do the things, it's also about why. Which values do shape our societies? How do different countries deal with change? How do we organize our communities and societies, and what values drives us? These are questions we explore together with curiosity and respect. Every society finds its own way to organize itself. And when we look at today's debate through the lens of reciprocity, some of the language about labor migration becomes even uncomfortable. Because the idea of simply bringing in foreign labor suggests a one-way street. Reciprocity disappears. The discussion becomes about solving our problems, often without considering the consequences for countries where the people come from. Even the word labor can feel reductionist, as if people mainly matter because they can work. In another context, I sometimes hear people say that universities deliver graduates. Not at all. Passes are delivered. Young people are educated at our universities. We help them to develop, grow, and discover their place in society. And at the same perspective should guide how we think about international students. If we truly focus on developing young people, why not give them the opportunity to really develop themselves within our alliance, to build experience, to develop professionally, to develop personally, to really grow. And then, with that broad intra-European experience, step into our societies with more knowledge, more experience, and greater seniority, enriching our societies with their perspectives, their values, and their presence, just as we hope we have enriched them. That is reciprocity. And perhaps it means that we also should stop framing internationalization primarily in terms of shortages. Not because shortages do not exist, they clearly do, but because the idea of simply filling gaps does not capture what internationalization really is about. Internationalization is about learning from each other, about educating students to become global citizens, and about working together on the challenges our societies face. It's not about taking. It's about sharing, learning, and building lasting relationships. And that is why we need international students and international partnerships, not as a quick fix for labor shortages, but as partners in shaping our shared future. And that's what transformative education is about. That is how we shape Europe's future. I wish us all a great conference in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Now, don't worry, STARS EU Annual Conference is not just the man's world. We have also respected female guests and leaders. So it's my pleasure to welcome Elinor Vetrano. Please join us on the stage. Elinor is academic leader at Aston University, serving as a head of department for work and organizations and director of the Center for Enterprise, Coaching and Innovation. Thank you.
Hi there. How is everyone? Good? Good. Excellent. Well, thank you for that introduction, Adam. It's disappeared. It is a true privilege to be with everyone here today, and I want to extend my thanks particularly to the STARS EU Alliance for the invitation. I also want to share a very special thank you for our fabulous hosts here at Silesian. Let's give them a big round of applause for hosting such an incredible event here, and inspirational as well. So, as we gather together to discuss the opportunities and challenges of educational reform, I'd like to begin with a slightly different perspective. Adam, at the very beginning, asked us to think together this week, and I'd like to challenge us to feel, actually, what is transformational education like when we feel it? And so, I'd like to begin today with a poem. A grand piano wrapped in quilted pads by movers, tied up with canvas straps, like classical music's birthday gift to the criminally insane, is gently nudged without its legs out of an 8th floor window on 62nd Street and onto a flatbed truck. And I am trying to teach maths in a building across the street. Who can teach when there are such lessons to be learned? All the greatest common factors come in long-necked cranes and flatbed trucks, or come through everything, even the air, like snow. You see, snow falls for the first time every year, and every year my students rush to the window as if snow were more interesting than maths, which, of course, it is. So please, let me teach like a Steinway spinning slowly in April air, so almost falling, so hinderingly dangling from the neck of the mover's crane, so on the edge of losing everything. Let me teach like the first snow falling. Now, I first came across that poem, Undivided Attention by Taylor Malley, just after I'd completed my teacher education. 4 years of grafting through the process of understanding how to package up and deliver chunks of learning that could be easily assessed, saving time and apparently still encouraging real learning. I think it was probably around the second year of that degree that I began to become disillusioned, not just with the whole place and purpose of formal education, but with how I was being encouraged, or not, to embrace learning myself. How was I being taught how to learn, or how to unlearn? So Taylor Malley, a former teacher turned slam poet, with his passion and his frustration and his hope, really spoke to me. Let me teach like the first snow falling. My aim then, as I thought, was to be enthralling, entrancing, to get the students I would be teaching to hang on my every word. I pictured awestruck faces, eyes sparkling with the fervor of learning. And yes, I confess it, ladies and gents, that I would be the most loved, the most fabulous of all their teachers. Oh, the arrogance of youth and inexperience. Particularly when I remember what my first day was like as a fully fledged teacher with my first class. I taught in this great school in a place called Livingston in Scotland, an area of social and economic deprivation. The school was a place of possibility and opportunity, but with an undercurrent of aggression bubbling not far underneath the surface. Now, far from being captivated by my presence, the students barely seemed to recognize that I was there. 12 years old, going on 40. I couldn't capture their attention with the clearly planned out day that I had constructed, or the plethora of worksheets and activities that I had taken so much care to prepare. I remember going home that night and sinking briefly into a pit of despair. How on earth was I going to turn this around? Now, why am I telling you all this? I promise, genuinely, there is a point. Our postmodern higher education institutions carry with them a DNA that is grounded in classical knowledge, with the main focus being on academic ability. In a lot of societies, this is still what constitutes intelligence. And intelligence, in particular academic intelligence, still consumes the postmodern university. An increasing number of universities and higher education institutions globally are focused on promoting their research profiles. In the UK, for us, this means scoring as high up the Research Excellence Framework, or REF, rankings as possible, wrapping their understanding of intelligence around the number of publications that a person has and the attainment of research grant funding. Although, interestingly, there are very few higher education institutions globally where staff salaries are paid purely through research income. Isn't it curious how often the practice of great teaching and learning is taken for granted? Move forward to 2026, here in Opava at STARS EU, and the world we live in right now looks and feels a little bit different. The level of political unrest and violence around the world is rising. The significant shifts towards right-wing populism in many Western democracies, the impact of climate change, and a perceived lack of action for those in positions of power, as well as the cost of living crisis brought about by the changing world of work post-pandemic. These are all contributing to a picture of a world on fire. Added to this, technology is moving, as always, at great pace. But the rise of generative AI capabilities is outstripping even the savviest of organizations, leaving most tech outdated or obsolete before it's even been plugged in. In 2020, Jemay Cascio, a futurologist, wrote an article for Medium magazine called Facing the Age of Chaos. I don't know if anyone here has read it, in which he outlined a model he developed a year or two before COVID hit that moved beyond VUCA or even VUCA 2.0. The model was called BANI. Cascio said brittleness is illusionary strength, that systems and structures that have historically appeared strong and reliable have failed catastrophically, often due to a need or desire to maximize efficiency. Now, we have seen this recently in the UK, in the higher education sectors, with a number of previously comfortable institutions very close to facing bankruptcy or closure, stripped of their historical revenue streams and forced to consider alternative income approaches. When you have reliance on a single point of failure and don't build slack into your system can shatter. This in itself can cause a lot of anxiety. And the level of anxiety in the world, already climbing, was accelerated because of COVID and was exacerbated by the other issues I've mentioned: cost of living crisis, climate change anxiety. Research shows us that students in pivotal years in schools and in universities have significantly higher rates of stress and burnout and anxiety. I'm sure in your institutions you have seen a rise in referrals to well-being support, as we have at Aston University in the UK. This pervasive sense of unease can also result in passivity, the response of doing nothing in the face of challenges because of a fear that whatever you do might be wrong. But of course, doing nothing is doing something. It's just not always useful. Non-linearity occurs when you cannot rely on the same cause and effect connections that you have historically relied on. Given that students returned to campus in 21-22, and since then, things have been pretty much the way they were before when it comes to timetabling and scheduling, we are seeing still a disproportionate cause and effect of COVID and its impact on our students' lack of capacity to learn for themselves, inability to connect socially with others, and a lack of desire to self-motivate. And then, of course, we come to the WTF moments, and we have seen a lot of these in recent months and years. Decisions that seem utterly illogical, that come out of nowhere and that have no observable rationale. Perhaps the idea was generated some time ago or simply not communicated, and by the time it surfaces, no one has any clue why or where or how it came to be. Often the answer might be to add more data into the mix, but that can often make things worse. And this is the context that universities are operating in around the globe. What a world to lead in. If you're an experienced leader already navigating this maelstrom, this will still be a tough ask. But imagine if you are new to it. How can we support those who are learning about leading and managing others through this new world to cope? Are the structures and mechanisms designed to support educational leadership and management up to the challenge of helping those in given positions of power? I want to take us back in time, ladies and gents, to 20 years ago, 2006. Do you remember where you were, what you were doing? I can't remember yesterday. But there you go. And to a fabulous TED Talk given by British educationalist Sir Ken Robinson. Do schools kill creativity? Well, it stirred up a lot of thinking, I can tell you, and had TikTok been around then, I've no doubt it would have gone viral. 20 years ago, he was talking about education being the one thing that would take us into a future we couldn't understand. And that's without the utter incomprehensibility of the world we're in right now. He said categorically that creativity now is as important in education as literacy and should be treated with the same status. But interestingly, 20 years on, it's still the arts and creativity that are often the first subjects to be dropped when money is tight. He also stated some other home truths. For example, suddenly degrees aren't worth anything. Now that statement could actually have been made today, because there has been considerable criticism of the higher education sector, certainly in the UK, focused largely on whether the programs we all offer are of value. It's an emotive term, that, isn't it? Of value. It speaks to an uncomfortable truth, perhaps, about the commodification of education and the transactional perception that many learners and their families seem to have of the process. And in turn, that challenges the perceived identity of university education, because generally, in our current environments, we have traditional approaches to the delivery of curriculum, lectures, seminars, tutorials. Our assessments are often done through examinations, written essays, reports. And of course, in the age of generative AI, every institution is now wrestling with how to ensure that assessment responses are authentic and demonstrate what should be the educative benefit of the work done. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually love the energy and the creative spark that Gen AI offers, and in fact, throughout this talk, you'll see it peppered in a lot of the images that I have used. But our institutions also have predictive management structures and standardized and often regulatory systems. And sometimes these are dictated to us by our local or our national governments. They rely heavily on what could be termed cold data, statistical metrics, factual information. But here's the thing. In a banny world, things don't go to plan. The kind of predictive logic that we have historically used to understand the world around us has to be matched, if not replaced, with creation logic and the interruption of warm data. I'm talking about trust and relationships and emotional literacy. Feeling, in other words. So our leaders now and in the future will need to be cognitively ambidextrous, switching between the kind of stable, comfortable, we've seen it all before information and the messy, ambiguous, and empathetic reasoning required when people and relationships come into play. Now, at this point, you could be forgiven for thinking, well, the world's toast, so let's just head to the bar. I haven't painted the most optimistic of pictures, and yet, I really am optimistic about our possibilities and our future as a global collaborative sector, because we have the collective capacity to evolve, the capability to redesign ourselves, and if we can get beyond the traditional discipline-specific mentality, the opportunity to bring real, rich collaboration to the table and achieve truly impactful results. In his blog for the Higher Education Policy Institute, Professor Alex Subik, Aston University's outgoing CEO and Vice-Chancellor, built on the concept of University 4.0, stating that such a concept envisions universities that are focused on socio-economic impact, inclusive education, and sustainable development goals, interconnected with industry, government, and society. He continued to say that this new university model is not about solitary academic pursuits. Instead, it thrives on collaboration, drawing diverse perspectives and inputs to address real-world challenges. Now, all of us know that in University 4.0, we bring in the fourth dimension of society at large, creating a call to action that is about delivering real-world impact for diverse societal needs and challenges. And this should be the stimulus for an educational revolution. Thriving in University 4.0 means a rethink of our institutional architecture and the environment we create for learning. It also means we need to turn our attention to how our people move and operate within that environment. Now, talking of movement, we're going to play a game. We are, really. So, as a team, ladies and gents, I would like us to count from 1 to 10, okay, as an entire auditorium. But we can't all say the numbers at the same time. So somebody's got to shout out 1, somebody else has to shout out 2, and so on. And if we all shout out at the same time, then we have to start again. Oh, well, there you go. Quick off the mark. Okay, let me just finish the rules. So, we shout out 1 and 2. If there's too much of a gap in between, we have to start again as well. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. Go for it. Okay, we're starting again.
1, 2, 3.
No, too many 3s. Okay, try again.
1, 2, 3, 4.
2 4s. Okay, so sit with it, breathe a little bit. We can do that. Come on.
1, 2.
One more time.
1, 2, 3.
I can see that this one's going to stay with us for dinner, isn't it, ladies and gents? No, you can't do it in order. But nice. Let's try it again at the end, shall we? So did you see what happened there? Yes, you did. We used empathy, physical presence, our bodies. We generated the data and we laughed a lot. We felt things. In order to understand what we had to do, warm data, in other words, ladies and gents, that is the human algorithm. To explore this concept a little more fully, I'd like to introduce you to the first of 2 models that might help us think about this together. Now, given that we're talking about learning architecture, let's make use of the metaphor of foundation stones for this university of tomorrow. The first stone focuses on unpacking and revisiting the notion of architectural safety. If we're asking our stakeholders, our learners, our staff, our external collaborators, and actually, let's face it, their families, their friends, the society at large, to create significant shifts in their way of engaging with education, then we need to consider first, how are we conceptualizing what learning experiences are in the first place? And this has to be done with the formal and informal education systems outside of the higher education context. From schools to further and vocational education, we need to visualize a future environment. Excuse me. Seems that game was too exciting. Apologies. Wow, I've just seen what that slide looks like. Quite cool. Okay, thank you for that. Yes, what was I saying? Oh yeah, we need to visualize a future environment where, as a sector, our commonplace things that we ask are, how can we connect? How can we explore? How can we collaborate? And how can we bring the outside in? This architectural shift will need to involve learning processes that create the psychological safety for rich and deep thinking together, where learners are actually part of the leadership of our organization, and the rigidity of structural barriers are dismantled. We also need to try and collaborate and not compete. And that is easier said than done. The second foundation stone moves the institution away from the comfort blanket of theory first, and instead requires of its actors an agility that enables them to grapple with real-world experiences. These then need to be followed by reflective processes, enabling the learners, I do apologize. To openly explore the why, how, and what of their experiences. By doing this, these learners will identify what theoretical frames they then need to make sense of the gaps in their learning. And this is about architectural reality. And here, we place the emphasis on the need to move learners out of abstract strategy and into sensory and embodied and lived realities of their learning. Through this, they will not only know what they need to do, but will very importantly develop their know-how. The instinctive, embodied knowledge that comes from being truly present in an experience. Our third foundation stone moves us away from subject disciplines and silos to socially constructed and relational learning, and from theoretical research to that which has real societal impact. This is no doubt where most of the architectural friction will come, which is incredibly useful, because as we know, discomfort is the catalyst for change. In the research world, things are already moving in this direction. In Europe, CORA is moving to societal impact as a requirement, and in the UK, the REF I mentioned earlier has done a similar thing, requiring a higher focus on impact case studies in the next round in 2029. And this is great, because when we're thinking about this third foundation stone, true innovation occurs where there is collaborative meaning making, and that has as its purpose real-world impact. Thinking about our institutions metaphorically, we are often more like machines, rigid and role-based, than ecosystems, interconnected, flexible, and adaptable to change. And I would argue that it's the latter that we need to be aiming towards. Leaders need to encourage insight and reflexivity in the organizations they lead, where reflective processes act like prisms, diffracting the learning around institutional corners and into siloed spaces, because this is where socially constructed and relational practice is key. And so to our final foundation stone, which I would argue is educational and architectural freedom. And this is where the institution takes on the metaphor of the brain, an emergent, self-determined and self-correcting network. In this organization, learners and leaders work together to create a potentially holocratic, heutagogical or self-determined structure which will develop human agency. Taking Entrecomp's view of entrepreneurship as a transversal competence which applies to all spheres of life, we could create entrepreneurial learning spaces, enabling the organization to become a learning entity, experiencing continuous transformational moments in an emergent and an organic way, all of which would lead to greater understanding and increased capability. Now, this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? I know there will be examples from all around Europe for this, and I'm going to share with you a few. Here are some institutions who've already gone down this path to some extent. The London Interdisciplinary School is one. The focus of its educational offering moves outside of siloed disciplinary degrees, and instead of focusing on knowledge acquisition, they focus on knowledge competence. They use the world's wicked problems as the vehicle for learning through, bringing societal needs into the very purpose of every learning experience. Amongst the alternative approach that LIS use is coaching in groups and as a tool to support learning. And this is something I would like us to think about a little bit more together. I'd like to introduce another educational movement that has done something quite revolutionary within the field of entrepreneurship education. And indeed, we have panel conversations relating to this philosophy in our conference program. So Team Academy, or Timi Akatemia, to give it its Finnish name, is a pedagogical approach born out of the social and economic challenges of the early 1990s in the city of Jyväskylä in central Finland. The philosophy has 4 central tenets to it. The first is real-world activity, not simulation. And because these programs tend to be found in business schools, the real-worldness is about setting up and running real business ventures. The second is socially constructed nature of the approach. All of the students work together in teams to set up and run these ventures, and they share their learning in their contact time with their team coach. The third component is the self-determined nature of the syllabus, which is a truly heutagogical element. The learners essentially decide for themselves what they need to know and do, and how and when they will need to know and do it. And finally, the fourth component, which is team coaching as the pedagogical delivery tool. And I would argue this is the most unique element of this particular model, because although coaching is used in different institutions to support learning, it is rarely used as the sole vehicle for that learning to take place. Now, these 4 components are key to the architectural infrastructure that I've shared with you, but they're also what makes this philosophy challenging to embed in practice. It's a rethink of how learning occurs, because it's not about someone like me doing something like this. Instead, it's about a shift of intention and purpose. It's about education as freedom, taking us back to bell hooks thinking. It's an unwavering belief that learners in this process are leaders, resourceful and capable, and it's about modeling of reflexive behaviors from leaders as routine for those in positions of power. Now, understanding how humans navigate this architecture brings me to the second model that I'd like to share with you, which is the dynamic, embodied, and reflexive leadership model, or DIRL, which doesn't sound very attractive, but we'll work on it. When you need to build the architecture, there needs to be a way of understanding how the people connected to that architecture are going to move within the environment. The DIRL model represents one approach for understanding the algorithm of that movement inside. And far from being a flat, 2-dimensional model, this is really a multi-dimensional model of exploration, interpretation, and enhancement. And it's quite difficult to visualize or imagine. So I called upon the help of Google's Nano Banana. I don't know if anyone's used that, but it's amazing, to visualize the different axes of this model. So look what it came up with. This is the x-axis. It focuses on exploration and experience. This is the forward momentum that's driven by learning by doing and real-worldness. Iterating learning experiences of all kinds, from academic programs of study to staff development and praxis, through learning in the messy and embodied reality of the Bani world, will create opportunities to exercise that cognitive ambidexterity I mentioned earlier. Gathering warm data from the human emotional responses to complex challenges will allow a more purposeful building of this environment. So how might this look in practice? Well, it could be something as simple for students as setting up and running their own projects or businesses. bringing in a multidisciplinary approach to the solving of societal and impactful challenges. Their leadership and management and the doing of the project activity could be their assessment in itself, basing the outcome purely on the warm data that they gather from these human interactions and failures rather than on theoretical frameworks. For staff and leaders, it could be something like office surfing, experiencing the world from other viewpoints, which is particularly useful to understand the professional services academic divide. Leaders could also be reverse mentored, bringing students and junior staff in to support their thinking, and that's common practice in a number of organizations. And how about we require all academics to take study leave, which would put them back into the working world in a real job in the discipline that they either trained in or work in now? A 6-month sabbatical to ground their academic practice back in the real world. The y-axis focuses on interpretation and connection. And here we're looking outwards, broadening our perspectives through socially constructed learning, which creates moments of insight, supported through team coaching and embodied practice. This expansion of understanding is facilitated through critically reflexive dialogue and action, where a space of safe uncertainty is held, and where teams of learners and leaders can safely view themselves and their practices, attitudes, and behaviors. For learners, this could be multidisciplinary coached action learning sets, supporting the development of understanding from a range of areas and using a coaching approach to interpret insights. For academic leaders, having cross-faculty failure festivals, events where learning is specifically drawn from initiatives and experiences that haven't worked, but in a space of safe uncertainty. Using reflexive dialogue to coach each other on the lessons learned without fear of penalty can be a hugely powerful development opportunity. The y-axis focuses on enhancement and elevation, and this is the upward transformation. If the environment cultivates genuine autonomy for the humans moving within, then this will enable more aha moments. For staff, the leader's role here is to step back and allow their teams the space to innovate, which includes being comfortable with failure, disconnect, and discomfort. For learners, the Team Academy's approach of heutagogical learning could be key here, particularly as the student's ability and confidence grows. Having final year projects where the staff step back and allow students supported through team-based learning to determine their own outcomes, timeline, and manner of assessment, which would build their resilience and their independence in learning. And for the academic community, what about having a sandbox semester where teaching teams are given permission to bypass traditional, rigid, and quality-assured approval processes to experiment with new methods and practice, which would give them the freedom to explore and truly enhance their practice. It would also mean that they were professionally trusted as a network to self-correct, allowing the teams to fail or succeed on their own terms. Now, to visualize how these three axes connect, I once again asked Google's Nano Banana to map this volumetric space, and it produced this, a very complex, futuristic rendering, which actually feels like a perfect reflection of the technological, banny world we're navigating. But while the visualization here is digital, the human experience of it is organic. I'd ask you to imagine that these pulsing wires you see are waves instead on a beach. With each surge, the individuals within the organization assimilate new knowledge and understanding, feeling reflexively their own development as their learning progresses. And of course, the learning can also return back across the sands of our existing schema, making connections to the things that we knew before. In a banny world, we need to create opportunities to develop negative capability, learn how to sit with discomfort without giving in to the anxiety of not knowing. Our institutional architecture needs to counter the brittleness we have experienced with resilience, creating instead environments where systems and individuals can withstand shock and recover from failure faster. It needs to understand and make space for anxiety, developing personal and institutional resilience to cope with uncertainty and stress and develop emotional literacy. And it also needs to counter non-linearity and incomprehensibility with contextual openness, flexibility, and embracing the creativity of cognitive ambidexterity, both warm and cold data. So, I have just finished putting the final touches to a book with a colleague of mine from Canada. Very exciting. Transforming the workplace through applied theatre, insights, practices, and challenges from the field. The quote here is from Elvin Turner, who is a best-selling author of the Be Less Zombie book of innovation, and it's taken from his foreword for our book. This has taken me back to a former life working with social political theatre, and I have to say it's amazing being here in this beautiful theatrical space. It feels like coming home to some extent. But I'm bringing a different contextual lens here, that of the world of work. Now, I'm mentioning this book not just because it's a shameless plug. It will be out later this year by Routledge. But actually, because much of what I have said here today about the embodied and visceral learning experiences required for our students resonates with what happens when we engage in theatre. Taking that human embodied learning and imagining it at an institutional level, that's the focus for this book. Additionally, the last chapter of the book, which is normally the conclusion, for us is not a conclusion. Instead, it's an idea that the conversation has to continue. And I think that's the case here. Returning back to Taylor Malley's beautiful poem and that line, "Let me teach like the first snow falling." When I was collapsed in a heap in my flat after that very first day with that class, that I have to say went on to become one of my best loved groups of learners, I came to a realization, which was that my teacher training hadn't actually prepared me for very much at all when it came to working with real people to develop what Elliot Eisner would call joyful learning. And that's so important for the learning to actually stick. The reason I wasn't prepared was that I was focused on the rigidity and the structure of the plans and preparation, not on the embodied and dynamic nature of rich and deep learning that occurs in spite of the plans that you make. I had been taught to teach to a playbook of sorts, and that's because it would give results. But actually, the learners I was working with weren't ready for or interested in that process, and I see that resonating in many of today's students coming through our universities. They were emergent thinkers, creative role takers, fierce debaters, and they needed the space to explore that in an embodied and visceral way, in a way that our 9-to-5-ness, modular frameworks, standardized learning just can't accommodate. Some of what I've proposed here might feel a little uncomfortable. In the UK, higher education institutions are beholden to two types of survey: the National Student Survey, NSS, and the Postgraduate Taught Education Survey, PTES. These are used nationally to measure the quality of the learning and teaching experiences for students, and of course, neither of them actually do. They measure instead whether the student enjoyed the program or not. They don't ask the students how much they leaned into their learning. They don't ask them how much they took advantages of any opportunities offered, or how much they developed self-determination or resilience. They place the responsibility for whether or not the student has learned anything squarely in the hands of the academics who taught them. Now, given that the experience of the kinds of heutagogical and embodied learning I've described today can be extremely uncomfortable and certainly not happy at times, the data produced from these surveys can often feel disconnected from the holistic experience that learners should have been given, and from the purpose of real, rich, and deep learning, which is essentially to develop independent and critical thinkers, self-determined and work-ready graduates, and above all, compassionate human beings. The challenge for leaders of academic institutions is to lean into the fear of being knocked off a standard league table, which can lead us to risk sacrificing what actually matters. It takes immense courage to risk architectural freedom when institutional survival might, and in the UK often does, depend on these league tables. Any leader who wants to take the journey through some of the possibilities I've described will need to accept that they will have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable at times. Now, of course, our world is always changing. Just like you never step into the same river twice, each second of life brings newness. But it feels like the world we find ourselves in right now is calling out for a radical rethink of the place and purpose of the work we do. And I'm really excited to be here with you all today to wrestle with this together over the next few days. What could this landscape look like? Our remit here at this conference is to imagine transformational education, after all. And I can't wait to hear about the pioneering approaches to pedagogical exploration that you're doing, because I'd like to champion those as part of our collective Bani antidote. However it is done, surely education needs a radical rethink. And we will need to be agile and intuitive, because I have no doubt our revolution will have to be improvised. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. And last but not least, of course, bouquet of flowers, wonderful. Last but not least, our next speaker will be Tomáš Gongol, Rector of Silesian University in Opava, previously Vice Rector for Strategy and Communication with long-term experience in university leadership and institutional development. Mr. Rector, the floor is yours.
It's quite a challenge to speak after Eleanor. Well, we need more Scotland in our lives, as I say. Thank you very much. Dear distinguished guests, directors and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all the shining stars. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to Opava, to Moravian-Silesian region, and of course to Czechia. And let me say this right at the beginning. It's not only a pleasure, it's also a proud moment for Silesian University to host the Stars EU Annual Conference 2026. Seeing nearly 200 colleagues from across Europe here today, that is something we truly appreciate. And when thinking about this gathering, I couldn't resist recalling, with just a bit of humor, that Opava has already hosted a rather famous conference in the past. In 1820, the rulers from Austria, Prussia, and Russia met here to discuss the future of Europe. And their goal was quite clear: to preserve the existing order, to keep things as they were, to coordinate how to respond to revolutions, and if needed, suppress them, and they failed. Now, more than 200 years later, we are here in the same place where great powers once tried to control the future of Europe. And perhaps where they failed, we have a chance to succeed, because we are here for a very different purpose. Not to preserve the system, but to transform it. Because what we are doing here is not about protecting the past. It's about shaping the future of education, the future of universities, what we've just heard from Eleanor, described as University 4.0, and in many ways, also the future of Europe. And Silesian University has a clear mission to actively contribute to the development of our region. And this is not just something written in a strategy. It's something we live every day. The Moravian-Silesian region is going through a major transformation. We are moving from traditional industries facing economic challenges, and like many regions across Europe, we are struggling with brain drain. Too many young people feel that they need to leave in order to succeed. And this is where universities need to step in. Not only to educate, but also to create opportunities, to inspire, and to show that great futures can also be built right here in our regions. This is exactly why the STAR-CU Alliance is so important to us. It connects universities that share similar values, similar challenges, similar ambitions. And it allows us to learn from each other, to combine our strength, and sometimes also to realize how differently we all understand the same things, which is also part of the learning process, of course. The themes of this conference reflect this perfectly. Education is not just about classrooms and diplomas. It's about shaping societies, supporting regions, and opening doors that might otherwise remain closed. But let's be honest, transformation is not easy. It means questioning what we have been doing for years. It means admitting that some things no longer work. And it means trying new approaches, even when we are not sure that they will succeed. We will make mistakes. We already do. But that is not a problem as long as we learn from them. That is transformation. So over the next days, I hope we will not only have productive discussions, but also honest conversations. The kind that starts during the coffee breaks and sometimes turn into best projects later on. I hope you will enjoy not only the conference, but also our city and maybe our local cuisine and beer, of course, which I can only recommend, especially after the long day of transformation. My special thanks go to organizing team. They have put an enormous amount of effort into making this event happen. And I believe they deserve not only our thanks, but also a bit of sleep after this is all over. And before we fully begin, let me give you one more reason to keep this tradition going. Next year, STAR-CU annual conference will take place at Krakow University of Technology in April 2027. It will be in March. We have the update. And do we know the date?
Yeah, from 17 to 19.
17, 19. So please book it. Let me finish on a slightly more personal note. Transformation is not something abstract. It is something that concerns all of us. We all have to try new things, adapt, and yes, make mistakes and learn from them. That includes all of us, even rectors and presidents. So please, don't hesitate to give us feedback. Tell us what works and what doesn't. Because without openness and honesty, there is no real transformation. I wish you an inspiring, enjoyable, and at least a little bit memorable conference here in Opava. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rector, for hosting this event this year. And after these inspiring speeches in English, It's time to relax in a language that we all share in common and that we all understand. It's music. So let me welcome the chamber choir of the Silesian University in Opava. Please come to the stage. Let's welcome the choir. And its conductor, Vladimíra Jašková. Music, and we also will be accompanied by musicians, Dalibor Rosipa on piano, Lenka Honková on violin, and Jan Zlámal on cello. And before you get ready, Vladimíra, let me ask you, I'll ask in Czech, váš sbor má už taky určitou historii a určitě jste prošli vývojem. Kde jste teď ve svém vývoji? Co hrajete a co uslyšíme?
Děkuji. Já vás všechny zdravím. Náš sbor vznikl v roce 1990 se vznikem Filozofické fakulty a mezi našimi členy jsou studenti, absolventi pedagogové Slezské univerzity, ale také přátelé Slezské univerzity, kteří mají chuť zpívat a zpíváme repertoár všech období, od renesance až po moderní hudbu.
So Vladimira said that this choir, which was established in 1990, plays all sorts of music from Renaissance until to contemporary music, and the members of the choir are either employees of the university or alumni of the university or just fans of the university. So enjoy the music. Thank you very much for beautiful music. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here with us, being very attentive audience. You heard music, you heard inspiring speeches, but this session, this first opening session is over, but I encourage you to continue conversations among yourself about the collaboration, about the future of education in Europe. But before we move on, I would like to invite you to join us also for a group photo. And I would like to ask you and all of us to gather in front of the theater, where we will take a big family picture of all of us. And I would like to ask the first rows of our distinguished guests and speakers to stay with us and also have a group photo here on stage. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day and the remaining program.